problem with his teeth. But I was really delighted Ben Emlyn-Jones agreed to come and talk tonight about some of the memes that we see in the media, with a particular reference to some of the zombie themes, which I was thinking was like Thriller. You remember Thriller? You remember Michael Jackson started to talk about? But there was a singer in the 70s, I think, an African singer, a Nigerian singer, talking about the zombie nation, you know, how policemen and army officials and people in hierarchy now seem to have a glazed over look when they reference you. So, I thought I'd tell you whose name. And then also, we're not here for the next 2 weeks, because obviously we're at the gathering setting up next week. So, if you want to have a look at the gathering, it's on the website. And we've got, as I said, we're going to be setting it up from Tuesday, and we'll be up and running from Thursday. The guy is called Fela Kuti. He was a Nigerian singer singing about the trouble with all the police and the armies, you know, these corrupt governments. And as he was talking about it in one of his 1970s, 1980s radio shows, I thought he sounds like Birmingham, because he was on about things like you can't travel across certain townships in Africa without the police stopping you. You have to have your papers, and they won't treat you in hospital. And I was like, Jesus Christ! In 25 years, we've managed to make a bloke who's talking about war-torn Nigeria sound like war-torn Erdington. It's incredible. So I'm really delighted Ben could get here. Just as an aside, Ian has brought some more seeds. There's rosemary over there if you want to go and have a tickle of rosemary, so won't mind. There's incense sticks and magnesium and magazines. If you want to bring anything in, bring it in yourself. We'll turn our phones off and we'll have an hour before we have a break. Let's say hello to Ben Emlyn-Jones, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Hospital Porters, pride and dignity, stop the New World Order.
Yes.
Welcome to Hospital. Yeah, I'm at the right meeting today. I thought I went to that Truthjuice Birmingham thing, but I have come to the right meeting because Derek, where are you? We have a hospital porter, an ex-hospital porter here. Thanks for coming, Brother Porter. Thank you. Round of applause for Derek, please. Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. So, well, thanks for coming, all of you. You know, seriously, great to see you all here. Just a bit about myself. My name, as Andy said, is Ben Emlyn-Jones, and I lived an ordinary life for a long time, and so I realised things weren't always what they seem, and it creeps up on me over the years, this idea that things might not be as I was told they were, and you know, there may be a few lies and misconceptions in this world that had to be addressed, and I think you know what I'm talking about, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about that tonight. I have Hospital Porters Against the New World Order, which is basically a blog. It's sort of a multi-channel, multimedia experience really, because there's a YouTube video. Also have Hapanmo Radio, which is a programme on critical mass radio, which I expect a few of you already listen, maybe listen to some of the other shows on that, and do check out Hapanmo Radio as well, if you can. So that's who I am. This is who I was. Oops, sorry, wrong. That's it. That was me for most of my life, actually. That you see behind you is the John Mackett Hospital, which is the largest and busiest hospital in Britain, presently. It's a major teaching hospital, and I was one of its porters, and I was very proud to be one of its porters for a very long time. And I was sacked. I was sacked very suddenly, in what I think very suspicious circumstances. It's impossible to prove, but I mean, it's a big subject. If I get time, maybe at the end, I can tell you a bit more about that, but there probably won't be time. But I have discussed this in other talks, and you know, in other media. I've been interviewed about this on Rich Planet TV and other programmes. So it's a great shame. I mean, the good news is I'm doing all right though. I've got a roof over my head, I've got food on the table, I can't complain. I'm a lot better off than some people, because I'm sure you're familiar, excuse me, you're familiar with Tony Farrell and maybe Kevin Annett, a lot of other people. More and more people seem to be losing their jobs. who are into these subjects, which is very worrying. I've spoken to several other people. One lady who is a senior manageress with Boots, the chemist. She's lost her job. I've spoken to a lady who organised a conference in Scotland who works in the leisure retail industry. She's lost her job. Just out of the blue, they've got exemplary records and they just get kicked out almost on trumped up charges. So I think that's more. I think the cries of coincidence are going very hollow as more and more of these people lose their jobs. And I say to you all, it's not. Don't let anyone scare you into being quiet. It may not be a wise career move, but if you think something's real, think something's true, you think there are dangers in this world that need to be expose them. And tonight, we are going to expose one of those dangers, and it's a worrying and it's an unnerving subject. And I'll tell you right now, what you hear tonight might well disturb you, but I will end on a happy note, and I will make you aware there is always hope. There are no guarantees, but I think I feel optimistic for the future. So bear that in mind as we go through this evening. I'm going to talk about zombies. Now, what is a zombie? Well, they go back a long way, actually, the idea of zombies. The idea originates in West African folklore. The word zombie actually originates from a Niger Congo word, from a Niger Congo language in West Africa, and the original word was unzumbe, and it got anglicised as it was brought over to the West through Haiti, the slave trade. It's emerged in Haiti as Haitian voodoo, which you may have heard a little bit about. But the original zombies were actually corpses that were reanimated by magical means, by a sorcerer or a bokor, as they call them in that part of the world. The bokor could take a corpse and cast a spell, which would cause it to become animated, not alive, but undead, and it would be a corpse. The undead corpse would have no will of its own, it would have no personality of the person who died. Thanks, Anne. The personality of the person who died would not be in it at all, completely absent. It would be effectively a robot almost to the will of the bokor. Now, it's best known by voodoo. Now, voodoo has a lot of bad connotations. It's associated with darkness and black magic and all kinds of various. There's been several horror films made about voodoo specifically. What it is effectively is a shamanic religion, much like any other. It has both a left hand and a right hand path. In other words, it can be good or bad. Now, in the 1980s, this guy did a thorough investigation of voodoo. He's called Wade Davis, and he's a Canadian anthropologist and an ethnopharmacologist. Now say that back to me. But he did a thorough investigation. He went to Haiti and he did a thorough investigation of the voodoo phenomenon and the zombie phenomenon, which was a part of it, because the voodoo priests and priestesses, they could summon what they call the loa, which is the spirits, which again, there was good and bad ones, and very often they were in between. It wasn't like Christianity or anything like that. It was a shamanic practice. And they could reanimate corpses. Now, there's actually a man called Clairvaux Narcisse who died, and he had a funeral, and then a few days later he turned up. This is what got Wade Davis interested in it. He turned up in his home village, just wandering around aimlessly like that, seeming to be completely in a daze. And the doctor apparently checked him over. He didn't have a heartbeat and he wasn't breathing. And so Wade Davis was fascinated, he investigated it. What he concluded was that the zombies were not really dead, but what was happening was the voodoo priest or priestess would cause someone to become zombified by poisoning them with tetrodotoxin, which is it's a poison. It's a very, very powerful poison, very deadly. No known antidote to it, and it can be found in the spines of pufferfish and some toads. And this is where the voodoo priestesses got their poison. Now, Wade Davis wrote a book in 1986 called The Serpent and the Rainbow, where he talks about his his adventures in Haiti and about what he discovered. And it was turned into a horror film in 1988 called The Serpent and the Rainbow. There's a still from it, one of the more frightening stills from that film. It's a bit scary because at the beginning it says it's based on a true story. And the fact is it is based very, very loosely indeed. You'll be glad to know if you watch the film. It's a very, very frightening film indeed. Now, through the 20th century, I mean, it's the 20th century, what is the century of the zombie in terms of fictional literature. It emerged into our culture through fiction during that century. I mean, there's many authors such as Richard Matheson and H.P. Lovecraft who put sort of semi-zombie themes into their literature, but really, the first actual use of the word zombie was in 1929 in a book. It was a book called The Magic Island by W.B. Seabrook, which contained the word zombie. And that's when it sort of entered the fictional world. The world's first zombie movie was called White Zombie, and it was released in 1932. It was directed by Victor Halperin and starred Bela Lugosi. And so that's how the sort of first zombie films came out, and more followed. But it only really took off in 1968. This is the classic, definitive and seminal zombie movie. It's George A. Romero's first ever zombie movie, Night of the Living Dead, and it's a cult classic. And it created basically the whole concept of what we know as what goes through your head when you think of a zombie today, was created by Romero. This is the first, the Night of the Living Dead was the first in a series he did of 6 films, which spanned 42 years. They're excellent films, well worth watching, I think. They introduced this popular idea of the zombie apocalypse. There were, like I said, the first sequel was in 1978, which was The Dawn of the Dead, and more followed. And the 5th sequel was actually in 2010, called Survival of the Dead. So let's go through some of the stills of that film, these films. So this is a still from the 1978 version of the original Dawn of the Dead. You can see the zombies here. This became known as the classic Romero-esque zombie. That's from Day of the Dead in 1985, I believe. And that is from Land of the Dead, 2005. That's it. Now, what Romero did is he brought into fiction, he brought into culture the idea of the zombie apocalypse. This is where this was not previously found in the previous zombie literature that I talked about. This is where an outbreak of these Romero-esque zombies causes a collapse of civilization. It causes society to basically break down. It's an archetype that's become very, very popular in dystopian and apocalyptic fiction, you know, end-of-the-world scenarios. The zombie apocalypse is a very, very popular one of them. Night of the Living Dead was the first one of those. In the zombie apocalypse, what happens is the outbreak of zombies is very widespread. It's usually global. And these zombies engage in an assault on civilization, which causes the infrastructure to break down, military law enforcement overwhelmed, and eventually a panic collapse of society. And there's usually just a few remaining isolated pockets of survivors who have to sort of scavenge for food and supplies, while constantly defending themselves from the onslaught of the zombies, which outnumber them many-fold. There are many, many different films of that type nowadays, not just Romero's. Romero's films have been remade many times. Sometimes the films have been remade more than once. In 2004, Dawn of the Dead was remade, but it was nowhere near as good as the original. And these remakes tend not to be, actually. The zombies themselves deviate from the Romero-esque model. I mean, for instance, they're more animated and agile. I don't know if you've seen that film. They can run like hell, you know. And somehow that makes them less scary. I don't know why. But I mean, it had a few things that really freaked the hell out of me. Like there was a zombie baby in the remake, which really I didn't sleep that night after I watched that. The Romero-esque zombie is, as I said, as with African and voodoo folklore, it's an animated corpse, which is mindless and undead. It's mindless, uncommunicative, never speaks. It just grunts and moans. It walks in a sort of show sort of slow, shambling walk like that, usually very unsteady on his feet. It appears dazed and semi-conscious, but it's very dangerous indeed. Constantly hungry and only wants to eat one thing, that's living human flesh. And it has only one objective, only one goal in its mind, and that is to hunt down living humans and eat them. So, I mean, in these films, in the Romero films and films like it, very often you'll find that the cause of the zombie outbreak is never revealed. It's just they're just there, and the viewers have to make up their own mind about what they think caused it. But in Dawn of the Dead, in the original Dawn of the Dead in 1978, there's a hint. There's just one line in the film which is eventually added onto the title as a subtitle, and that is. That's coming up, yeah, that's coming up soon. But that may be for a future remake, that's a good one. But in the original Dawn of the Dead, it was when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth. I know. Temperature dropped there, didn't it? Yeah. Anyway, there's other forms of zombie movies, that is zombies in sci-fi horror. And these have become very popular recently. I mean, mostly it's post-2000 we've had a lot of sci-fi horror films with zombies. And in this case, the viewer is told the cause of the zombie outbreak, and it is a sci-fi element. It's not supernatural. It's some kind of disease, usually a virus or some other kind of infectious agent. Good examples of this are I Am Legend.
Oh, that was a good film. I suppose.
Yeah, it's excellent. That's a still from that film there. Great movie there. And another one is 28 Days Later, which is a British one that's set in this country. Not as good as some of the others, I don't think, but it's all right. It's worth watching. And Resident Evil, and this is actually a series of films. There's about 5 or 6 Resident Evil movies now between 2002 and I think they're releasing another one soon. Anyway, Resident Evil, incidentally, is the most interesting sci-fi horror zombie movie there is. I'm going to be coming back to that later, all right, because there's very interesting elements to that. Zombies are not confined to the cinema. You often get them on TV as well. And I don't know how many of you saw Darren Brown's Apocalypse. Now this is, I could go on for an hour about this alone. It is one of the most remarkable television programs I've ever seen. One of the ones I hated the most, actually, because I tend to hate most television, but this one is particularly despicable. It's a reality TV horror story. It's kind of a blend of, just imagine, if you're not seeing it, imagine in your head a mixture of The Truman Show, Night of the Living Dead, and Jeremy Kyle. You got it? That's basically Darren Brown's Apocalypse. And what they did was he decided to select somebody. Right? He held a meeting, a big conference where he got people to fill out a personality chart. Darren Brown, I should say, if you're not familiar with him, he's a very famous TV hypnotist and very clever man. I mean, he's a skeptic. I don't agree with all his views on, say, spiritualism and ghosts and things like that. But there's no doubt he's a very talented man. I mean, he's trained in psychology and mentalism. Yeah, that's right. He does, yeah. He's done some programs about that very subject. He's very clever man. Not someone I'd want to meet, actually. I just cover up my eyes and sort of like keep at least 6 feet away from him. Very wise. Yeah. But what he did was he selected a man called Stephen Brosnan, and the reason he selected him was he thought that Stephen Brosnan was living a thoughtless existence without caring for people around him. He was unambitious, dispassionate, slothful and immature, an overgrown teenager. He didn't clean his room, he made his mother do all his washing and cooking for him. And he had trouble keeping a job, and he spent all his free time down the pub. So for this reason, he deserved to be made to think his world had been destroyed and all his family were dead.
I watched it.
Yeah, it's what Darren Brown thought was he hoped that if Stephen Brosnan he lost everything he took for granted so much that he developed courage and compassion and decisiveness, and he learned to value his life. And at the end of the experience, he'd be a man changed for the better. Well, I find all reality TV very ugly and unpleasant, but making a man think he's in a haunted house, making him think he's taking a pill which will cure his fear of spiders, that's one thing. Like I said, making him think his world has been destroyed, his family are dead, and everything he cares about is gone. I mean, it's, and you know, Darren Brown, he's, I don't think he's a qualified psychologist, but he's a very enthusiastic amateur, and like all psychologists, or what, no, sorry, like some psychologists, sorry if anyone in this room is a psychologist. That's not an apology, I'm sorry you're a psychologist. No, I shouldn't. My mother got a psychology degree as a mature student, so I shouldn't be nasty, shouldn't be too nasty in generalising, but there's a lot of arrogance among psychologists I found, and this is what Darren Brown showed. He's putting him through this horrifying ordeal for his own good. And pouring judgment on this man. I mean, he veggies out in front of the TV with a tube. He gets his mum to do it with his lining. Okay, he's a bit of a slob, but you know, how dare Darren Brown judge a man like this to the point where he's willing to put him through this horrific experience? And there's, I mean, I should say, you know, there's also rumours that the whole thing was staged. It was all fake. And I mean, Darren Brown says he can prove it's not, but I mean, I'm not so sure, because I mean, something struck me straight away. I mean, I actually spoke to a guy now who's a solicitor, and I said, look, what's the legal position on what they did with this programme? And the guy, no way could you do that. Brosnan, if someone, you know, Brosnan could have gone straight to the police and reported them for kidnapping and assault. And you know, things like his family, see, in order to set up this scenario, Brosnan's family were involved, and his friends. They were all part of a conspiracy to make him think his world had been destroyed. Seriously, I mean, there's none of them going to let anything slip. No, I mean, it's... so, I mean, I think it may well... I think it's quite likely that it is staged. Quite likely indeed. Anyway, in the 2000s, there was a revival of zombie films. Mostly sci-fi, you know, mostly the sci-fi zombies that I've talked about. But there was also the welcome return of George A. Romero, and he made 3 more of his Dead series films, and like I was saying, it's really, really good. There was another film came out, the most recent. This is the most recent sort of addition to the genre. I don't know how many of you have seen World War Z. That's a poster for it. Starring Brad Pitt as a United Nations sort of individual doing something with the United Nations, and it's interesting. I mean, the tagline is, "Daddy, what's martial law?" It's frightening. It emphasises this innocence of the children and being put up against this horrible situation. But I mean, many people. It's very interesting. You know, there's a lot of sort of propaganda, I think, in it, you know, especially the United Nations, because you know there's all kinds of organisations involved, like the Centre for Disease Control and Prevention, which I'm going to talk a lot about this evening, and the World Health Organisation. These are bodies and individuals that I'm very distrustful of, but they're presented as heroes in this movie, and it's very pro-Israel as well. I mean, in the film, Israel have got this huge wall around their city, which of course they've done in real life, the peace wall, you know. But in this film, I think the zombies sort of like climb up the wall, they throw themselves at it and create a huge pile of mountains. It's the most memorable scene in the film to get over the wall. And now these zombies as well, I mean, they're super zombies, these. I mean, they've gone beyond the 2004 Dawn zombies. These ones don't just run around, I mean, they can run at 100 miles an hour, they can leap 20 feet in the air. I mean, it's really quite incredible. It's really quite incredible, but I didn't like the film much, but it's unusual. I mean, one of the most interesting parts of it, actually, because the denouement of the film, the last section of the film is set in Wales. You don't get many American films set in Wales, which is quite unusual, so I don't know if they're trying to say something about Welsh people and zombies. You know, I'm afraid I can't be Wales myself, boy. Anyway, the zombie apocalypse, right? Well, that's another poster for World War Z, where they're all rushing to escape. United Nations hero with his family there. Now, this is a book called Zombie Apocalypse by Emlyn-Jones et al. And what am I doing for time? Right, I'll grab this as well. I've got a copy with me actually tonight. And at the break, if you want to have a flick through it, please do. Although don't run off with it because it belongs to my brother and we want it back. But this is an interesting. This book is basically, it's a very, very vivid account of a Romero-style zombie apocalypse. Straight out of Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead, but it's set mostly in Britain, and It's very unusual, very vivid, because the plot combines the supernatural and sci-fi elements, which is very unusual. The cause of the zombies is like it's a sort of like plague that's laid down by Nicholas Hawksmoor using occult methods. Now, Nicholas Hawksmoor, if you don't know, is actually he was one of the draftsmen of Sir Christopher Wren, who was a high secret society initiate and built a lot of the sort of esoteric symbolism you see in the city of London today, like St Paul's Cathedral and other places like that. Hawksmoor was one of his draftsmen. He was also an architect in his own right and built many churches around London. It's a big subject to go into, but there's a lot of occultism in Nicholas Hawksmoor's work. This book is an epistolary, right? An epistolary is a book told by a series of letters. A good example of epistolaries are things like the Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis, which is about devils writing letters to each other. And I don't know if you're familiar with Paul Scott's Raj Quartet, Jewel in the Crown, made into a TV miniseries. But of course, in this day and age, the word letters has a very broad definition. It includes things like emails, tweets, text messages, MSN messages and things like that, blog posts, etc. But if you have a look through, it's actually quite a chilling read. Have a flick through the break if you like. Zombie Apocalypse by Emlyn-Jones et al. So that's a zombie in literature as well. Now, you get a sense, what the book gives you, as with the Romero films, it gives you a sense of what would happen. What would it be like? And you think, well, they seem to have tapped into something quite vivid and quite believable. Now, along with all the serious stuff, there are some spoofs and comedies as well. Because anything can be parodied, anything can be lampooned, and zombie films are lampooned as well. This is a poster from Shaun of the Dead, which I think is the best zom-com around. It's now Simon Pegg there with all the very classic Romero-esque type zombies. It's kind of it's a homage really to George Romero. It's very worthwhile to see. There's many others as well. There's a film came out recently called Warm Bodies, and they've made one, the Large Hadron Collider, where Professor Brian Cox works, and they've got zombies in that. It's actually very strange. I've not seen that yet. I've got to see that. And it's called Decay. Of course, there's an absolute army of zombie fans in the world, and they get together at conventions and websites and things like that, and they have zombie walks as well. Now, a zombie walk is like a parade through town, like you get with like many other carnivals and things like that, except everyone comes dressed as zombies, and they walk through town acting like zombies, and they have competitions for the best costumes and the best acting and things like that. And there are massive zombie walks in Toronto and in Warsaw. They're big ones, and they had one in Nottingham actually in 2008, which is interesting as well. Now, this is all zombies were to me. I'm sure they were to you as well. But then one day, about a year ago, I got some information that came to me which made me think differently and made me a bit concerned. And I'll go into that for you. I'm just going to turn the camera over. So I've got to only takes files of certain sizes.